Hey everybody, welcome to video 68. For this video lecture, we're going to be covering the female reproductive system basically in its entirety. We're going to try to get to as many of the structures and as much of the function as we possibly can here, stopping short of going through the different stages of pregnancy and some things like that. So, the female essential organs, remember the essential organs for both sexes are known as the gonads. In females, those are going to be known as the ovaries. And so the purpose of the female reproductive system is not only to permit fertilization as well as form the ova, but they also are going to need to carry the offspring to term. So this here's an overall view. We're going to talk about many of the structures that are located here as we go through each one individually. So we're going to start with the ovaries. The ovaries, they're approximately almond-shaped in size on either side of the uterus, and they weigh about 3 grams, so very, very small. For reference, a paperclip is about 1 gram. But when a woman is born, each ovary contains about 1 to 2 million ovarian follicles, within which there is an oocyte, or an immature ovum. By the time that woman reaches puberty, about 400,000 of that 1 million have matured into primary follicles. And then of those 400,000, about 500 will mature and be ovulated for potential fertilization. So she's not going to ovulate all 1 million of those original follicles that she's born with. Many of them actually are going to be contributing their cytoplasm to the ones that end up becoming mature follicles to allow them to have enough nutrients and to have enough organelles to be able to carry out their functions. So ovaries are going to be responsible for oogenesis, or the process of forming the female gametes. Meiosis is going to take place that results in 4 daughter cells, each that with half the normal amount of chromosomes. We call that haploid. But the cytoplasm in meiosis is not going to divide equally. Actually, one of the 4 daughter cells is going to receive most of the cytoplasm, and that's the one that will eventually possibly become the mature follicle, while the other 3 are just simply going to disintegrate. And so the 3 that are going to disintegrate, they end up being very small because they donate all that cytoplasm to the chosen one, and that chosen one ends up being so large that it's almost pretty much visible to the naked eye at approximately 1 millimeter. The ovaries are also going to function in the secretion of estrogen and progesterone. We'll talk a lot about hormones during this unit. So here you can see the process of meiosis in females mirrors very, very closely spermatogenesis in men, where there's going to be a stage of mitosis to regenerate the oogonium, and then meiosis that's going to take place eventually leading to 4 haploid cells, but in females only one of them is going to be chosen and become the mature ovum. You can see here that there is a pause that takes place. We won't really dive into why that is, but meiosis will pause, and then once puberty hits, it will resume, but pause again in metaphase 2 until right at conception, where that ovum is going to then complete the rest of meiosis. But for our purposes, we just need to know that there are 4 haploid cells being formed through meiosis, but only one is going to be chosen to become the mature ovum. So once an ovum is released, it's going to be traveling through the rest of the female reproductive tract, which is comprised of 3 ducts: the fallopian tubes, the uterus, and the vagina. So as you can see here, starting with the ovary, we're going to be traveling through these fallopian tubes until we get to the uterus, and then if no fertilization or implantation occurs, it will exit out through the vagina. So there are 2 fallopian tubes, one on either side of the uterus. You'll also see these called the oviducts or uterine tubes. And on the ends of these fallopian tubes, the distal ends, there are fimbriae. Basically, these kind of finger-like projections that are kind of reaching over the ovaries, attempting to capture any ova that are being released at ovulation. Technically, the fallopian tubes are not attached to the ovaries, and so that does actually provide the possibility that an ovum gets released into the abdominal cavity, which can cause some other issues and different, there's a name for that if that ovum is fertilized, called an ectopic pregnancy, but we'll cover that later. But within the fimbriae and within the fallopian tube, there are ciliated cells that are having their cilia beat back and forth and create a current that the hope is that current is going to pull in that egg that's being released and get it to travel down the fallopian tubes. Fertilization of those ova typically is going to occur in the fallopian tubes and actually in the distal third or the distal half of the fallopian tube. If you get fertilization any later, that can cause potential issues. And the fallopian tubes are approximately 4 inches long. Remember, the ovaries are about 3 grams, almond shaped, so these structures are fairly small. The uterus is about the size and shape of a pear, basically completely muscle outside of some of the blood vessels and connective tissue that run through it. And it sits behind the bladder, so it's inferior to the bladder except during pregnancy when it becomes so large that it'll actually sit inferior it'll sit dorsal and superior to the bladder because it'll kind of wrap over the top. The upper section of the uterus is known as the body, while the lower section is going to narrow into what's known as the cervix. The uterus is comprised of 3 layers. You have your perimetrium, which is basically just a serous membrane. You have the myometrium, myo meaning muscle, so this is smooth muscle. And you have the endometrium, which is the part that's going to be built up and shed in preparation for impregnation, and is then, if there is no impregnation that takes place, that's going to be shed during menses. Then we have the 4-inch canal, the vagina that's going to receive the penis during intercourse for the deposition of sperm. Within the vagina, you're also going to add in the hymen, which is a membrane that's going to partially cover the vaginal orifice. One thing, common misconception is people believe the hymen completely covers the vagina, and that's how you get the cherry popping that was used way back in ancient Europe to check for the virginity of a female. That's actually not completely true. The hymen only partially covers it because you still have menses and things like that, and so that stuff needs to be able to be shed, and so that hymen cannot completely cover the vaginal orifice. Within the vagina, it's about a pH of 4.5, which is pretty acidic. Not completely acidic like the stomach. The stomach's around 2, but normal water is around 7. So it's kind of halfway in between stomach acid or hydrochloric acid and water. And it provides a good housing area for lactobacillus bacteria, which are going to be responsible for secreting lactic acid that helps prevent other harmful pathogens from getting into the vagina. So this is an example of healthy, good bacteria playing a role in keeping your body safe. The external genitalia, otherwise known as the vulva, in female is going to contain these structures here. I'm just going to list them out. The mons pubis, which is a layer of fat that lies directly over top of the pubic symphysis. You have the clitoris, which is erectile tissue. It's actually very, very similar to the penis in men, especially if you look at it from a developmental standpoint. Going to be found at the anterior junction of the labia minor. And we'll talk about the labia here in a second. You have the orifice of the urethra. Orifice just, again, meaning opening. The labia minora and majora, small lips and large lips, they're going to be used to protect the female urethra. You also have the orifice of Bartholin's glands and the orifice of the vagina. So these are the external genitalia, again, collectively the vulva. We don't spend a whole lot of time on these outside of pointing out the importance of the labia minora and majora in protecting that female urethra. You may remember during the urinary system, women are much more susceptible to UTIs because of the very short urethra, and so it's very important to be able to protect that so that any sort of infection does not travel to the bladder, to the ureters, or even up to the kidneys. And then female accessory glands, there are 2 in females, the Bartholin's glands and the breasts. Bartholin's glands are going to sit on either side of the vagina. They're going to be responsible for secreting a mucus-like fluid that's going to help lubricate the vagina. And then the breasts, which are going to be responsible for lactation, producing milk. All breasts pretty much have the same ability of milk production. Really doesn't matter when it comes to size there. And the reason breasts are able to lactate is they have 20 lobes arranged in radial fashion, just means in a circle around the areola. Each of them is going to contain a lactiferous duct where that milk is going to be formed, and then those lactiferous ducts will eventually drain into the nipple. Okay, so that is the female reproductive system, taking a look at just structures and functions as well of the essential and the accessory glands. We have a lot more that we will cover on the female reproductive side, things like ovulation, menstrual cycle, and things like that. But I just wanted to focus on structures and functions for this video.